The manager for a brokerage firm has noticed that some of the firm's stockholders selected stocks based on the firm's research, while others tend to just kind of follow their own instincts. To see whether the research department performs better, the ones that use the research perform better than the ones that use their own instincts, the manager served 100 brokers, and these are the results. So you can see there were some that used research. That's what we're calling Group B. That's these people here. And there's some that didn't use research. It looks like there's 55 of them. In total, there's 100. Among them, some of those stocks went up and some of them went down. And so we have this table to kind of show all these values. So we can do things like saying, okay, what's the probability if we chose a broker at random, what's the probability that they picked a stock that went up? I said the probability of A is the event that they picked a stock went up. So what's the probability if I picked a person at random? What is the probability that they went up? Well, the total number of people that picked stocks that went up is 60, and there's 100 people total, 100 brokers total there, so we would get 60 out of 100, which would be 0.6. Alright, what's the probability of A complement? Well, that would be using this number right here. There's 40 total that picked stocks that didn't go up, and out of 100, so 40 out of 100, which is 0.4. Okay. The probability of B, this is what's the probability that a particular broker used research. Well, there's 45 that used research out of the 100, so you get the idea here. That's 0.45, and similarly, the probability of B complement is 0.55, 55 out of 100. All right, so none of these really tell us about any sort of combination, if they picked the stocks, if it increased or decreased their probability of getting, if they used research. That doesn't tell us if that increased or decreased the probability of the stock going up. So what we need to do here is we need to restrict ourselves. We need to say, okay, just among those, so just for those that picked stocks that went up, if we don't pay attention to whether or not they used research, 60% of the people picked stocks that went up. If we restrict our view and only look at those who used research, then I'm only looking at this line here. 30 people picked stocks that went up out of the 45. So we would say for those, the probability of broker used research picks stocks that goes up, so like I said, a broker that used research, we're restricting ourselves to this line, the probability their stock went up is 30 out of 45. So I'll ask my calculator to do that one for me. 30 divided by 45 gives me 0.6 repeating, which is definitely higher than 0.6, which implies that those people who used research picked stocks, that there is if you have somebody that used research, the probability they pick a stock that went up is greater. Conversely, you could look at the people who didn't use research. You could say 30 out of 55, their stocks went up, and you could say, well, 30 divided by 55, if you didn't use research, the probability your stock went up is 0.545. Now, be careful about assuming causation here. That's not really the focus of this particular, what we're talking about right here, but this is not to say that using research caused their stocks to go up. There could very well be an external factor, and we're not talking about causation in this class. We're only talking about the probabilities, and so we're talking about the probability. How we would describe this as the probability that the stock went up given that they used research. The probability the stock went up given they used research. And how we would write this, because it's really kind of cumbersome writing it out like that, is, well, the probability the stock went up, we're talking about the probability of A. That's the event A. And when we use a vertical line between them, this is how this is how we write given when we're doing a probability like this. So the probability the stock went up given, given that they were in B, given that they used research. So that we would write this as the probability of A given B. Now there is a formula to figure out these probabilities, and this is essentially what we're doing. So the probability of, if we're dealing with two sets here, E and F, You can see there's a little Venn diagram so I can point at stuff. Here's E and here's F. The probability of E given F, one way to figure this out would be to use the size of the intersection, the number of elements in this intersection, divided by the number of elements in F. Essentially what we're doing here is saying, what's the probability of that you're in E if we already know you're in F? So we already know you're in F. We know you're somewhere in here. What's the probability that you're in E? Well, what we're doing here is really restricting our sample space. Instead of having this entire outer box as our sample space, in which case you could think of, you know, if there was, let's say there were some numbers in here, I don't know, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So the probability that you're in E in general here would be, well, 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 plus 4 plus 6 is 12. Add that to 8, that's 20. The probability you're in E here would be you'd add up all of these things. That's the n of S. You'd add up these two, that's your n of E. You do n of E over n of S. If you're restricting yourself just to looking at F, if you say, well, we already know we're within F, the probability of E given F here would, well, I'm going to ignore the fact that all this exists, and I'm only going to focus in on F. You can see there's 4 that are in E out of the 10 total. This would be 4 out of 10. So the probability of E given F here would be 4 out of 10. We can do this with probabilities as well, so not just with the number of elements in the set. That's kind of what I did in this example. This is the number of elements in the set. We can do it with probabilities as well, and oftentimes we have to do it with probabilities because we don't have access to the sample space.